All right, so today I'm going to see if this crushed material out of my rock crusher will process nicely through the gold cube. So what I'm hoping for is if there's any free mill gold, of course the gold cube will hopefully capture that. But I believe if there is any gold, it's going to be locked away in the sulfides in this stuff, which is why it's important to get it crushed as fine as you can. And I'm hoping the gold cube can do a good job at collecting not only any free mill gold, but any sulfides that might be in there. I do have a little box to collect the tailings, so I'll go through both afterwards and see what it collects. So the goal is collect gold, sulfides, concentrates, and once I have sulfide concentrates, I can then process those concentrates to hopefully get out more of the gold if it's in there. So that's the plan with this thing right now. And this came out of the crusher, which I got a little bit better, but in the future I'm going to put a smaller screen size on there, which should hopefully get this processed a little bit finer. So right now it's a mix of really fine powder and a little bit more coarse rock. So it probably would have been good for me to classify this first, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to skip that. I'm going to put it right into the gold cube. We'll see how it handles. All right, got this up and running. I'm going to put in a couple drops of this Power Dry, which I believe is similar to Jet Dry, just different brand name, but it should be this, do the same thing. It's a little surfactant. I decided to wet this down, and there's a really interesting film on the top, and I believe that's all sulfides. So I'm gonna go ahead and start scooping this stuff in. It did get a little bit foamy, but that's all right. Now I might have put in a little bit too much surfactant in there, but it'll work, I believe. Also, I scrubbed the mat to make sure all the air bubbles were out. Looks like I got them all. And we're ready to start shoveling this stuff in. I read that with sulfides with this thing, you want to do a nice slow feed. Yeah, there's a lot of sulfide film floating on here in this bucket right now. I don't know if I need to go back and forth or if I should probably just shovel it right down the center there. Don't know if I'm doing this a little too fast or not, but the amount of sulfides floating inside the bucket right now is pretty crazy. Getting close to being at the bottom of the bucket. I will say this has an interesting smell to it, and there's still a lot of sulfide film down in the bucket. I'm hoping this is doing the job. Be interesting to see what it looks like in the mat, especially the first one. Hoping I'm not feeding it too fast. Now this thing's designed to be fed like as fast as you can go, just about. But for sulfide collection, people are saying to go slow, feed it slow. So this stuff's forming like a clay since I got it wet, so I'm not sure how that's going to impede anything here. The smell reminds me of when I was actually down in the mines. All right, down to the last bit in the bucket. I got like a slurry going. Carefully dump this out without making too much of a mess. Don't want to overload the box either, the cube. All right, that's the last of the bucket. Let that run for a moment, and then I'll undo it and we'll see what's in the mat. I don't see really much in there moving. Looks like everything's locked into place. If we have any gold, it'll be up here, but I'm hoping that we caught our sulfides, and hopefully this did a decent job of capturing any of the tailings. And the water's pretty filthy now, but I'm going to go ahead and undo it. And I'll start cleaning this up. I probably won't show the cleanup process because not much to see there. Alright, so the first tray is off. I'm not seeing any visible gold. There is some chunky quartz in there. However, I am seeing a lot of pyrite, sulfides. So this has done a good job, it seems, at capturing the sulfides. A lot of that kind of brownish metallic, kind of hard to tell on camera. You'll have to take my word for it, but it's pyrite. Actually, right there, that's a big chunk of pyrite right there. Another chunk of pyrite. So this is capturing the pyrite, it seems, and keeping it in the upper mats. No visible gold, from what I can tell. Didn't really expect to see any. But if I have, most of my concentrates should be in here, hopefully. Pulled out my tailings, essentially, and looks like there might be some heavier sulfides that got in here. Doesn't really surprise me if that's the case, so I'll go through this eventually. I believe we're going to have a lot of fine silt in this thing. Actually, not as much as I thought, but there is some down in there. So, all right, so I dumped most of the water out of this, and there's essentially the silty, well, kind of sandy material. A lot of it's dark, so I'm thinking there might actually be a lot of sulfides in this, which kind of is discouraging for using the gold cube as a method to collect sulfides. All right, so I went ahead and I cleaned only the first tray. I'll clean the other two later. I just wanted to see what the first tray caught here. We should be ready to pan. I already picked out some of the bigger pieces of quartz rock that got stuck in here. So, yeah, let's see. As you can see, it's still pretty coarse. So I definitely need to run this again, probably, and also upgrade the screen. But already, you can see we got sulfides right underneath this pile. So this did capture, in this first tray, a decent amount of sulfides. Yeah, like that whole pile right there, everything right here just about is sulfide right now. That's all sulfide. There's big chunks of pyrite still. And if there's any gold, I imagine that's where it's going to be. So I just panned it out real quick. And with the regular sulfides, you got this really dark grayish black material. I'm not sure if that's magnetic or not. You can see it kind of around the edge here and up top. But no visible gold in that quick pan I did. All right, so a bit of a time jump here. I've cleaned out all of the trays from the gold cube. So this section here is all of the sulfide that I tried to collect. And I tried to get as little quartz as I could. However, a lot of the sulfides, it is really difficult to pan and keep it separated from the quartz. So that's the pile of sulfide that came out of the gold cube right there. And this right here, for the most part, is all the waste material out of the gold cube as well. There is sulfide in this. I tried to clean it up as best I could and separate the larger quartz chunks from the actual sulfide, but there's still sulfide in this. So I've saved this, and this is going to get reprocessed. A lot of this is going to get recrushed, and then I might try to figure out a way to efficiently separate the sulfides out of this, because this is a tedious process. Now, since there were sulfides in every single part of the gold cube, all the way down to the final tray, I'm kind of wondering how many sulfides made it into the tailings. I know for sure there's going to be some in here. I'm just curious how much made it through. And if there's a significant amount in here, I'm going to have to figure something else out if the gold cube is not doing its job efficiently, if there's too many sulfides. I don't think the gold cube was intended to collect sulfides. This has just been a test, and I can always use the gold cube for other gold prospecting needs. But or I could buy more trays. Maybe I can make it like a 5 or 6 stack. Or I do have a sluice box. Maybe I should run a sluice out the end of it. But now I'm going to process this and see how many sulfides are in this mess. All right, so I did a couple quick scoops of this, and there actually is a little bit of sulfides in there. Not a whole lot. So I'm going to quickly go through this entire bin right here, see how many sulfides in total are. All right, so I quickly went through the tailing pile essentially, and that's all the sulfides that made it through. That's about all the sulfides that made it through. So I think if I ran a sluice box, or if I purchased a couple more trays, it would probably help capture the last bit of sulfides. But since I have a sluice box, maybe I can rig something up and capture the remaining sulfides in that manner. So, but basically all I have left to clean up now is the silt pile. So I'm kind of curious how much of the fine silt has sulfide. So I'm going to run through that now. So I did a really quick pan of the silts here, and there actually is sulfide that is in the silts. So what I mean by the silts is all the stuff that floated beyond the collection tray within the tub. So this is all the stuff that was in the tub around the bilge pump. So there is sulfides in there. So I panned this extremely quickly, so there could be a lot more in there. So again, here's all the collected sulfides from the gold cube. It actually did a pretty fair job at collecting a good majority of it. However, it did not capture all of it, and a lot of that could be because I don't have this material fine enough, so I really need to grind this down. As you can see, there's some pretty chunky pyrites in there, like that one floating around right there. But making progress here, so I got some things to work out. All right, so of course the next step is to roast these sulfides. See if we can get any gold out of these. Because I'm pretty sure it's going to be locked up in the sulfides. We're not going to have any free mill gold in here. So thus I need to roast it. So instead of roasting the sulfides with propane, I'm going to try doing it with hot coals instead. So I'm going to get a small fire going, get some hot coals, put a little logs around my metal container, and get to roasting. Alright, so I got some hot coals on this. I'm going to build the fire up around the pot, and that should get it roasting. Obviously you do not want to be breathing that, so I highly recommend doing this in a ventilated area. We're not doing that at all, and wearing a respirator. The sulfide roast is going pretty well. I can already see a slight color change in the material in the pot. Luckily I am upwind of the fire. Now I have a little slight breeze, which is perfect, so I'm not even getting any smoke. Also a little bit zoomed in here and staying back. But when you roast sulfides, it will release sulfur dioxide as well as other potential toxic gases. Don't want to be breathing that. Alright, so I've let this cook for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Not sure if the campfire got hot enough compared to propane. If not, then I'll just use the propane furnace and get this heated up. Looks like there's a slight color change to the red. I'm going to go ahead and dump this in cold water. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and dump this into the gold pan there. I got a cheaper gold pan. Hopefully it won't burn into the plastic. I got some really cold water there. I'm just going to pour the concentrates into the pan, and hopefully that's enough to quench them and hopefully not melt my pan. If I had a metal pan, I would use that, but I don't. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. There we go. Well, roasting them in the fire must have done something, because they're definitely oxidized. A lot of it has turned red and a little bit of black. Alright, so here's the results of attempting to roast the sulfide concentrates with essentially a campfire. I don't know if it actually got hot enough. We do have some nice red oxides, which I'm guessing is some of the sulfides converting to hematite. So that's a good sign, but I'm not sure if it all converted. I might rerun this and just use my propane furnace, and I might do that for now on in the future. If you're wondering what the suds are, I put a surfactant in there, so if there is any fine gold, hopefully it will not float away. I can see there are some chunky sulfides in here, which have not fully broken down, and that's probably because they're not fine enough. They're too big of chunks, so this will definitely need to be ground down a little bit, crushed a little bit. And there's the really heavy stuff right there. And one thing I noticed about it, it likes to really clump up together. Now, I'm losing sulfides on the edges. I'm not sure if that's my not so good panning technique or if it's just because of the amount of sulfides that are in here. And I have not removed the magnetics, which means this will give me more trouble for sure, trying to pan it all. Trying to be really gentle with this last bit. Well, basically a whole lot of nothing this time. There might have been one or two tiny specks of gold in there, but nothing. Kind of disappointing. When I did this before, there definitely were a couple of small chunks of gold, which I have pictures of. This time around, not so much, but I did roast the previous stuff over the propane furnace, which got the container a lot hotter. It got the bottom red hot, and having this over the campfire didn't really do that, so maybe I need to get this stuff to a higher temperature to fully liberate any gold if it's in here in the sulfides. Or maybe I need to crush it down to a smaller size. It's probably a combination of both. So I'm going to clean this up and I'm going to rework it and we'll put it in the furnace next time. All right, so real quick, I separated all the magnetics out of what I crushed and basically all the concentrates that came out of that gold cube. So that's mostly all the non-magnetic stuff, which for the most part is just all quartz. So roasting definitely seemed to do most of the job over that campfire. In the future, I might do over propane because it's faster. I do use more propane doing that though with my furnace. But yeah, that's all the magnetics. There is a little bit of sulfide in there that's still shiny, so it didn't fully convert, but it definitely made it magnetic because it converted enough to either hematite or in this case it seems magnetite because, well, magnetite's magnetic, so I'm sure there's a little bit of both in there. And then of course all the quartz material. All right, well, that's gonna pretty much wrap up the video. Kind of disappointing results, no visible gold. I kind of expected that. I was hoping for at least some fine gold after doing the sulfide roast here, but nothing too visible. So when I first did this, I used the propane furnace. I got actually a couple of quick video clips I'll show. Yeah, I roasted the first bit of stuff that I had crushed in the rock crusher, and there appeared to be a couple little specks of gold, which I collected and have images of. So it looked like that my samples had gold. So I crushed the rest of my sample material, and that's what this is now, and no visible gold. I figured that if there was gold, it was going to be locked away in those sulfides, but maybe it's so fine that the gold cube is losing it. And I imagine as I'm panning too, I'm probably washing away really fine gold if it's there, or it's still really locked away in the sulfides, or maybe it's still locked away in all these hematites and magnetites that I've created from the roast. I'm definitely going to have to read more up on this, and what I might have to do if there is gold, or to actually test how much gold there is smelt it down in my furnace, which is something I've never done, don't really know much about, so I'm definitely going to have to learn, but I now have a furnace to do that, so I would like to learn how to essentially assay. It is expensive. It's something that's not cheap to do, but I mean, it's something that's not too cheap to do because you have to get all the chemicals and the fluxes, and then of course propane, but I think it would be a good learning experience. I believe there's a couple books and there's loads of YouTube videos out there on people doing that, so I would like to give it a try. Now I still have this 5-gallon bucket here of all this material I collected a couple weeks ago, which I have a video on. That's not a good sample. So I still have this stuff I want to crush. I got a full 5-gallon bucket. So I'm going to clean up this whole system eventually. And once it's all cleaned up, I want to run this whole bucket, get it down to a nice powder. I still got to put a better screen in there so I can get the material down finer. But I'm going to run all of this. I mean, just looking at this material, you would think that there would likely be gold. I mean, there's pyrite right there, there. There's like pyrite all throughout the white quartz, and then you got this banding of sulfide material going right through it. This is actually another band here and on the bottom, but the surface was exposed, so all the pyrites have essentially weathered out of this piece here. You can see how oxidized it is on that end. But you can see the pyrites in there. The stuff looks pretty decent. When I run this 5-gallon material through the rock crusher, I then need to decide what I'm going to do with it. Should I just separate all the sulfides out of the quartz and roast it? Would it be good to roast the quartz with the sulfides? I do know with certain roasts they recommend putting silica sand. Well, silica sand is quartz, and well, plenty of it here. So, or should I run it through the gold cube, see if I can collect most of the sulfides that way, and then see if I should either roast the sulfides to get free gold if it's there, or should I just go straight into the furnace and try the assay for it? But the only thing I'm worried about, if there is really fine gold, I'm wondering if the gold cube is actually not collecting it, washing it away. And then, of course, when I'm panning, how much of it is I'm actually losing if there is really fine gold. That's where a shaker table would be really nice. And I have been looking at examples of small ones that people have built, and that might be able to do. But who knows? Maybe there isn't enough gold in these samples to actually matter. But that's all stuff I'm wanting to figure out, and that's all part of the fun. So this will basically wrap up the video. That was basically a good little small test run of the gold cube to see what it would do, if it would collect most of the sulfides, and it looked like it actually did a pretty decent job of getting a good majority of the sulfides. Obviously, it didn't get it all, but I can also possibly make the results better by getting a smaller filter size of my crusher so it actually grinds down to a smaller size. I've also contemplated maybe creating a mini ball mill. I have a couple old rock tumblers, and maybe I can put some of the concentrates in there and tumble it or something. If any of you have experience doing this or have any inputs, I'd love to hear it. Any tips or tricks, because I've never really done this. So I've done regular gold prospecting, but when it comes down to crushing rock and trying to get gold, unless you got nice chunky free gold, it's not easy apparently. So anyways, this will conclude the video. Hope you all enjoyed it. So you all take care, and I'll see you all later.